Hello, lovely dance people, and welcome to David's Dance Podcast. I'm your host, David Evans. We are joined today by a multi-talented individual. He's a dance artist, a poet, a journalist, a writer. His movement draws from West African and hip hop styles. He creates work and writing that engages in conversations that are around identity and belonging that are often difficult to have conversations, but really well handled and beautifully put together and very necessary and poignant conversations. We're so pleased to welcome to the podcast Isaac Ouro-Gnao. Isaac, welcome.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining. We had quite a few technical difficulties at the start, so
Yeah.
it was a bit of a Sisyphean effort getting Isaac on the podcast, but we're so happy to have him here. You and I, we met at Ella Mesma Company, who is another great artist making work about identity, and the kind of experience of the diaspora. And it's been kind of a great journey since. I found you a really helpful touch point as another writer, and you've been a helpful point and person in my experience in the company as well. I won't pick you up too much. I'll just want to jump in and let the audience get to know a little bit more about you. Tell us about your dance journey. Where did it all start for you? Where did you first see dance? What was your first kind of exposure to it that made you want to do it?
My first dance experience was in a shoddy, semi-abandoned community centre in Wembley.
Isn't that what all community centers are like? Dude, I've never seen one nice youth community center.
You wonder why people don't go to them as much, aside from cuts. But yeah, it was.
Yeah.
The thing is, I can never remember the year, but I know it's around like 2007-ish. Because I remember going to competitions in 2008, but I don't know if I was dancing for a year or two before that. But yeah, it was an audition for a street dance crew in Wembley. Thing is, I used to be in a choir before that. I used to be a singer, and I had no experience of dance outside of like music videos or watching.
What kind of choir were you a part of?
Not the church choir, but it was the school choir. And it was a Catholic school, so we did have like hymns to be sung, but it would be in like talent shows, and we did a few musicals as well. I remember Little Shop of Horrors, which actually came on later down the years, but yeah, things like that, just extracurricular. Staying after school.
I did choir growing up. It's kind of less common over here. I know it's bigger in Wales. It's not as some things have, and a few TV shows have made it more like mainstream, I feel like, in recent times.
But yeah, that wasn't the case when I was doing it.
Yeah. In the US, it's a funny thing. In the US, it's like being a part of choir, men's choir is common. The Americans are really big on performing arts, but not for the sake of the arts, but because of their kind of obsession with charisma. Do you know what I mean? So it's the kind of thing where the arts are often seen, especially in the kind of like A-type kind of high schools that I went to. It's like, oh, that's not something you do as a profession, but we want you to have charisma, and that's really valuable, and to have confidence, so we want you to do something like that. It was interesting, like men's choir was seen as actually like a really masculine, like really manly thing, to be with like a bunch of other guys and sing, and which I feel like it doesn't have quite that vibe over here, but like I absolutely loved it. and a lot of my best friends sung as well. And it was actually a really, as far as like my high school period in America went, like it was actually a really enjoyable time.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, I mean, it was quite a good experience for me as well. But they're saying that like the backdrop of it is quite different. Like we're in Harlesden, we're in an all boys school. Yes, it was Catholic, but it was still quite like what's the
Lads,
word?
lads, lads.
Yeah, a bit. Yeah, a bit. But you did have all sorts of characters and different people in that school, so it worked out in the end. And yeah, I was kind of left to it. You know, it did start with a bit of bullying, but
Mhm.
after like they get used to you, it's kind of quite calm. But yeah, I was focused on singing until my brother who was going to the audition. It was him who found it out. My brother's 6 years my senior. Um, Habib, he's called. So it was pretty much just we've got nothing to do at home. We finished all of our homework and all of that. What do we do? And he was really nice in bringing me into things he was interested into,
Mm.
which is quite nice for a brother, I think, because it could easily be the opposite. Like, I don't want you involved in anything I'm
Yeah,
doing,
this is my thing. You stay away.
Exactly. But
Yeah.
no, he was quite good in bringing me into stuff. So we went. I think it was quite a grey day. It was raining, I think, and then it let up. And when we got there, there were two other guys also there, and it ended up just being us four who turned up to the audition.
Really?
And yeah, and I don't know if it was by default that we all got in, but I
That's
think they were
the
really
that's the best audition advice that I can give is if you want to do well in auditions, go to auditions nobody knows about. If you want to ace an
no,
audition and make sure you get the job, is go to an audition that's really far away or in a random location.
yeah, it
Um,
was quite far away. We had to get a bus that pretty much like next to the next town, from Harlesden to through Stonebridge to Wembley, and it was like in the depths of Wembley. I remember there was a leak through the ceiling. There was a little bit of a puddle on the floor, so we had to mop that up before starting. It's like those, it had those movable mirrors on wheels that we had to set up.
yeah.
And then, yeah, it was a bit cold. And, those community centers that are quite close to like power outlets, like electric power stuff. So there was a lot of
Yeah.
like black and yellow tape around community center itself. So it was
Yeah, that all sounds really child friendly.
very, but yeah, it was so unique. I can never forget. Um, but yeah, we went there, and I don't know if you know the other two dances. It's on your Matty, he goes by Matty, and the other one is Iko, his brother.
I don't know. Sorry.
Okay, they've been involved in a lot contemporary wise and hip
Uh-huh.
hop as well. Biko works. He dances for Boy Blue at the moment, I think.
Oh, sick.
But yeah, so that was the inception. I don't remember how long the audition was, but yeah, a cold grey day in Wembley is all it will start.
That's great. And so what did that lead to? Was that like, I know, was that like a youth dance company or what was that?
Not necessarily youth. It was mixed stages. I wasn't one of the. I was one of the youngest, but I wasn't the youngest. The youngest at that point was around 11,
Hmm.
12, and I was in my mid-teens. But yeah, it's just a street dance crew. Did like different styles, different street dance styles, hip hop styles. That's where I pretty much got my fundamentals from, popping to breaking, which I had to stop because I got injured. And
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
weak wrists, weak joints. I've had that since now, where I can't really do any freezes and any freezes for too long without feeling like pain in my wrists. And I
Yeah.
landed a front foot really, really badly on my heel, and
Yep.
that's complicated things as well. So I kind of stopped doing breaking. But like, popping, locking, waving, all of that good, um, yeah. And we didn't really do that much house back then. It was pretty much just focused on street styles.
Yeah.
So yeah, we'd go to competitions. We would do like events. There were a lot of ribbon openings in Brent that we would get invited to perform at, things like that, just small. But yeah, it was a really, really good experience. I even remember having the ability to like step out of school, like ask for permission at school, to skip school for a competition. And it took a lot of convincing for my parents, but we got there in the end. And yeah, a few of them we would travel, and things like, was it Butlins we would go to for those street dance competitions? But yeah, you know Butlins?
I don't know.
Like those resorts, like getaway resorts.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'd say working class. Where you have like.
Is that like a kind of Center Parks kind of thing?
Kind of, but you'd have activities there. You'd have like a swimming pool. You'd have, all you can eat and things like that. It's like family orientated.
Yeah. Yeah.
But like those venues would be used for the street dance competition, so we could go there and live there for like 2-3 days that the competition was there for. And we won a couple of things.
Nice.
Again, I'm laughing because the major thing we won, we were in the intermediate category, and there was only 3 groups.
Yeah.
So by default, we were going to walk away with a trophy because he got third, second.
That's also the best way to win a competition is enter intermediate rather than advanced. But I do remember. I can't remember what competition it was. It was some in Reading, like a street dance competition, and I was doing it with Street Stylers, who are a Reading-based hip hop crew that I was a part of while I was at university. I worked with them for maybe 2-3 years. And to be honest, I didn't take. For me, I was still like breaking was the thing, and I wasn't taking it too seriously. And like, I mean, I was doing breaking competitions and like never getting past prelims. But then and I was, so I kind of went into it with no expectations, and I did the all styles, and I was like, I don't really want to do like advanced, like that looks like, that was like 1v1 battles where like the intermediate was more just like heats, and they just had people just freestyling basically. But I won that out of like 50 people, which was like absolute madness, especially because my like knees were like totally messed up. I like had really hurt my knees or something. I can't remember from what. And so basically the last round I was just breaking and just power moves. Like I was just like on my hands basically. And somehow I like got that, and I was just like honestly surprised. And I was like, I need to do more of this instead of breaking competitions. This is way easier. like b-boying, you go out, do like a backflip, and you don't get like so much as a clap. Like,
yeah, that's expected.
Like, b-boying is just savage, man.
But I don't know if you've like seen those like TikTok videos about dance that have been floating around, but there was one where it was like different characters in a dance crew. So you've got like the choreographers, and you've got the tricksters, like that person that literally just comes out from the back, does a trick, and then goes back because they can't do choreography.
Because they can't do choreo. Or if they do the choreo, they're like at the back. They like come forward for the flip and then like straight to the back again.
Exactly. When I started, I wasn't so great at choreography, so I started learning tricks to have like a bit of a thing. So this very same competition that we won the intermediate thing for, I had a front flip to do, right? And like, dramatic street dance thing where like both sides split, and then they all go down on their knees, and then you split the middle from the back and you do your flip, and then you continue.
Of course.
So instead of a front flip, I chickened out halfway through.
Oh no.
And ended up doing a front handspring, so I was still on my hand and going over. But I I must have messed up my run up because I I ran so hard, so fast, that I ended up going a bit, rotating too much, and I wasn't even straight. So I did my front handspring. I ended up like veering to the right, and I landed on my knees and dove like straight into like
Yo.
my other dancers' like face because they're kneeling facing the center.
Yeah.
So I just went over and it's quite funny. Like I landed on my knees and I flew forward and headbutted this poor woman.
What, in the audience?
No, no, on stage. Like this was,
On stage.
yeah, this was still on stage. So I headbutted this poor woman on stage, and we had to carry on. And I was bleeding, she was bleeding, but we finished it. And I wasn't even that hurt, but by the end, I was just so embarrassed. I was just pretending I was like, I just broke something, and I was just lying there. I was like, the one thing I had to do, my one moment to shine, and I ended up headbutting someone.
Oh my god.
But yeah, good memory.
Dude.
We won.
The headbutt's the worst. Like if you get like concussed on stage, because then you're just like totally like discombobulated. Like I remember the first UK break-in championships that I went to, and I watched a guy, his crewmate, like crouched down, and then he ran and jumped off his back and attempted a double front flip.
Ooh.
He did one front flip, and on the second front flip, headbutted the floor.
Oh dear.
Oh, I shouldn't be laughing. He's probably dead. he like and the MC was like, yo. Like it was so gnarly. And like they never stopped. And he tried to stand up, and he was just like a boxer who just got knocked out. He just like was like, oh, and then he like,
you get a bit dazed, don't you?
Yeah, sat down again. And then yeah, I think they call an ambulance for him because he was like, yeah, he was concussed pretty bad. And the MC was just like filling in the time, just going, it's real out here, boys. It's real. Like just like it was just 10 minutes. He's like, what you're seeing isn't fake. It's real. That guy really headbutted that floor. Just like trying to make what was you if you injure, you don't get that in any other sport where you injure yourself and you have a hype man next to you.
Really?
Like just hyping your injury. It's real out here, man. It's real.
It's even worse when the injury happens to like a timed music beat or break. Like you know how classically you get things like glass breaks and like air horns. I headbutted that woman to a glass like breaking, so it was perfect. It was perfect.
On beat. It was on beat.
But yeah, street dance stories. A lot of street dance stories.
Brings back so many memories. Oh, that's great. So you're at this youth company doing competitions. While we're on it, you talk about choreo and stuff and picking up choreo. Where's home for you? For you is like improv freestyle, is that like where you feel most at home, or is it choreo, like where you're at now?
Where I'm at now, I think before I was very allergic to freestyling because I was scared, but like really I would not touch it. But yet now I'd say it's completely flipped, where I find a certain element of freedom in like freestyle and like improv. There's just so much breathing room.
Yeah,
and I know choreography like requires something different, but I still like that. If I'm like trying to choreograph, I'd probably choreograph about 40% of the piece, and then and those would be like the waypoints, to reach through improv. And that will either be through character work or through movement, or through like storytelling or using like other elements of like music or
So you have like moments you want to hit, or you might have some sequences that are strict choreo, but then you're freestyling in between.
But the thing is, I try to focus a lot on character work now anyway, so like the character would still have a limited vocabulary.
Right.
So I'm not be let's say I'm a shaman or something, I'm not going to be doing pops and like, crump hits, am I?
Yeah.
My vocabulary is going to be quite limited to a certain pool of, let's say I'm drawing from like, West African style, like a Konyi or Talawa. There's still a specific movement pool I'm drawing from in that improv. So it doesn't look out of place, essentially, is what I'm saying. It's like I'm freestyling and anything goes. But yeah, I definitely lean on improv more so now, and I'm still trying to find like that sweet balance between improv and choreography. Yeah, definitely, yeah.
But I know what you mean. Like for me, like freestyling is definitely home. Like that's where I started, and that's still a place where I feel most comfortable and where I feel I can usually express myself best. And like often performatively, freestyle's quite good because you can set the movement textures as you're saying and you're talking about, but often it goes kind of it helps you be more present in the choreography, and maybe a bit more authentic, especially if that's like freestyling's home for you. um yeah, I can find it's a little bit easier to get into the flow, get into the zone sometimes with freestyling. And I just think it just also just depends on how you are kind of cognitively as well.
Yeah.
Like I find choreography versus freestyling is always a really good sign of just like how much is someone a creative lateral thinker versus a more logical, mathematical, patterns based thinker. And I pretty much have found with all my friends, like they could tell me their academic subjects, and I could probably tell them what they were like at choreography versus freestyling.
That's interesting.
Because and I think it's rare to be like to be good at both. It's hard to be good at both. Most people are good at one and they have to work on the other. Like I've gotten much better at choreography, but I did have to work hard on it.
Yeah.
To kind of get there.
Yeah, I've had to work at freestyling as well. And it's quite weird how now it seems to be the stronger thing, and I don't know if that's to do with like experiences I've had,
Right.
choreography being too rigid, being too limiting. Because on my hand, from yes, quite a limited number of years working professionally, about 3 to 4, I can count on one hand like good experiences I've had with choreography or learning from others. And maybe like leaning into freestyle and like improv more is kind of like, I don't know, a semi rebellious act against, being kind of pushed into some way or form of being on stage or otherwise.
When you mean like good bad experiences with choreography, do you mean that as like you a performer dancing it and or like learning it, or do you mean like the working environment?
No, always learning it, because I have my own way of working outside of all of these things that I'm quite comfortable with. Still pushing and still learning. But yeah, all of these have been learning from others and how like their teaching styles influence the process.
That's true as well.
Influence the process. How it's quite interesting because I used to be more comfortable in choreography. I'm the questions person. I tend to ask a lot of questions, a lot of technical questions, like specific as well, because I'm a knower. I need to know, and it comes from like the curious side of me. Being a journalist and all of that as well. I'm naturally curious. So if I don't know something that even I don't need to know, but it would help me if I did know, I would ask. And even that has been an interesting experience in certain spaces, whether that's welcomed or kind of pushed aside. So whenever I'm presented with choreography, I have to know pretty much exactly what I'm doing, why I'm doing it. And the why is quite important for me because it helps me kind of unlock the process for myself, why I'm doing it, what is it kind of thing. But sometimes that information is quite I want to say annoying for the choreographer to give out all the time.
But annoying.
Yeah,
It is like take some reading though, because yeah, sometimes they're just trying to get through the material, just like
yeah,
offload it to you. And they're like, I don't want to get into
yeah,
the like what might feel like to them kind of wishy-washy deeper stuff then
yeah.
there and
And it
then.
has been,
But other times, like, like working with Ella's pretty open to that stuff. And sometimes choreographers find it genuinely helpful because sometimes you ask them the question of like, why are we doing this in this way? And they go, oh, I actually don't have an answer. And sometimes that's helpful because then they can go away and come
yeah,
up with an answer, or it helps them clarify for themselves of like, actually, what is this sequence about? What is that feeling that we're chasing here?
absolutely, yeah. And
So it can be, I think, actually really helpful feedback for a dancer to give, or not feedback, but a helpful part of the process, I guess.
yeah, yeah. And the good experiences that I've had have involved that sort of thinking, like open. And I think it tells a lot about ego as well. If,
Mm,
you know, if you don't have the answer, you don't have the answer, then you move on. It's better than, saying, don't worry about it, or just focus on this, or stop asking questions.
yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, no, it's been quite interesting. And I've also had to like wrestle with those two sides of me where, um, I'm having to put that wanting to know aside just because, we need to get through the content or we need to get through the work,
Mm,
and having those moments of, okay, finally, like the shackles have been released. Why? Help me understand so I can do better for you for this
yeah.
piece. And yeah, going back to Ella, I think that was an experience I had quite early on with her as well. When the piece was still being figured out, foreign bodies. This is and it was like, but why? I need to know. It's like I don't have the answers yet. I'm like, okay, interesting.
Mm,
So what do I do with that? And yeah, it's quite interesting. But whenever I get space to create and just be, yeah, it's the best feeling. It definitely is home. And I don't know if that's because over the past few years, I'd say I've grown into being more of a house head more than like a street style. So I'm moving more
hmm
into like funk styles and like club styles. And house has such a liberating feeling, and just doing it just breathes like just do you kind of thing. And it really has changed my thinking in creating and like approaching choreography and learning choreography as well. Um,
mm,
because yes, it is structured, but the moment you're left to your own devices, you're meant, you break away from those structures. It's about how you put this step back to that step that you might have learned in different
mm.
spaces. It's about how you, work with the music, how you are, being, focusing on your musicality. It's all about you and how you express.
Mm.
And I think, yeah, there's just something about it
I
that's
think
so liberating.
I think that's one of the things about house that, and really good house dancers, and why when you see it done really well that house just thrives, is because it like combines high detail and rhythm and musicality, especially in
Mm,
footwork and essentially in that sense structure. But it combines that with a real looseness in the groove and emphasis on groove and feeling, and like, yeah, and kind of an openness with the use of the arms, and more like kind of expressiveness and kind of an easygoing. The feet are working majorly hard while
yeah.
the top is on vacation, basically. That's that's kind of
Good
like
way of putting it.
house for you. Yeah, the feet are slaving away, but the top is just like, is just chilling. But it's that kind of contrast that makes like house like really work, I feel like, and creates like quite a cool vibe when you watch it and when you do it as well.
Exactly, exactly. And yeah, I'm sure there's a correlation between that and moving away from being quite strictly choreography to being a bit more expressive and
Mm.
improv based. Yeah, I just love house, man. I just love it.
It's dope. It really suits you. Like, of all the styles I've seen you do, I think it's one of the styles where I do see you like Like let go the most, and just
Mm,
you just seem like most kind of not necessarily just yourself, but like most at ease, I think, in that
yeah, yeah,
style.
I'd
It
say
seems
so.
like quite a homey style for you.
Yeah, because again, I think a lot of the styles, the other styles I approach with character. So it's not necessarily like Isaac's dancing. It's like
Yeah. That's kind of
pride
it.
of
That's
me
it.
in
Yeah.
space. Um, but yeah, house allows a freedom that even it's not strictly house. I'd say I do like house and a bit of Afro house, and I bring a bit of like contemporary looseness into it.
Yep.
I just like feeling loose and having intricate moments and hitting a few moments. But yeah, you're just riding the beat and you just chill. I think that speaks about, yeah,
Mm.
about who I am, because I'm quite a relaxed person as well.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit about the West African dance side of things. Like where did you learn some of these styles? How did you incorporate them into what you're doing? Because like as a dancer, like from what I've seen you do in the way that I've seen you move, I think all your styles are really well integrated. You're like quite a well realized dancer, in that it doesn't feel like, this is this style, this is this style. And it's clear that you have like good foundations and everything, but that you're able to blend things into just kind of one dancer, one body, one kind of person. Um, where
Thank
did
you.
the kind of, you're welcome, where did the kind of West African dance styles, like you talk about some specific ones. Tell us a bit more about those.
Cool.
Yeah, and how you got into it.
Um, Long story short, so I'm Ewe, which is like a ethnic group in Ghana and Togo, but I'm Togolese. So I'm the Togolese Ewe, and one of our like native dance styles is called Agbaja, which is what I started with. And the thing is, it's quite a celebratory dance
Hmm.
style, and it's not that it's simplistic. It's to the eye, it's quite simple, but there's a lot of intricate movement going on, and that tends to be the case for a lot of Afro diasporic styles. To the eye, it's
Mm,
like, oh, they're just having fun and waving their hands around. Like, no, there's a lot of work going on, especially
yeah.
like polyrhythmic. Um, and I think because I come from like hip hop styles and like club styles, like the footwork and then the upper body tend to be connected but separate. I'd say connected by the hip and the spine, but they tend to have different journeys in West African styles.
Hmm.
But yeah, I've just always been interested in identity, and that tends to be, home and roots and history and ancestry. And this journey, I think, began in 2017 when the main work I've been working on, the Oreo complex, which is about, in a nutshell, the white on the outside, uh, no, white on the inside, black on the outside, and brown on the outside kind of thing. Imagine it was the opposite. That's quite interesting. But
Oreo, I think they call it.
yeah, so that label, and I've been kind of researching it, and part of that research is to look at yourself and at your own history.
Hmm.
Not necessarily who or what am I, but what who or what do I represent, for myself and for others who know me and for others who don't know me. So it's not necessarily like I don't know who I am, because I feel like a lot of identity work tends to be placed into that category of questioning the identity itself rather than exploring aspects of the identity. I don't know
Right.
if that makes sense, but I've seen a lot of work that tends to be misjudged as here's an artist who has no idea who they are, so they take into the stage to explore who they are, and they're just experiencing their roots and things like that. Like that's quite a simplistic way of putting it, and
Right. Like
using
maybe
that.
a more combative form, or I don't know, that a more maybe disruptive way of dealing with identity. Um,
Yeah, it doesn't seem to lead anywhere because it's always isolated to that person or to that artist. Like this
right.
is their personal journey, but more often than not, that artist is doing that to talk about a larger issue, a larger social political issue.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I really didn't want to be another. black artist just talking about black struggles, and I get seen as, oh, okay, he's exploring his black struggle. Well done. And then I go home and I'm great because I learned more about one person rather than seeing the bigger picture. So part of that was really solidifying things in me so that ambiguity doesn't get put on stage.
Right.
The more I know myself, the more I'm in charge of what the audience sees and perceives. So part of that is going back to that style at Agbaja and kind of looking at what it represents for me and the Ewe people. And I haven't had a tutor. Again, I'd put it down to having been a period of my dance history being self-taught. I call it the YouTube era, when everything was kicking off on YouTube and everyone was just putting videos on, and you just learn the choreography and doing your talent show at school, things like that. So I've gotten really good at learning just from out, not in the same physical space. So I interrogated that. I spoke to my mum about it, spoke to a few uncles about the style, and because it's not that well known, because there are a lot of different indigenous styles in just that country alone, let alone West Africa, let alone the whole of Africa. So I had to do my own specific research. So I looked into it and I trained it, practiced it. I tried to get a bit of mentoring from other people who had different styles, like Talo technique from Thomas Presto, and did a few classes with Alessandra Sotin of Akoni technique, and even Vicky Bokwe, I'd say, with her approach to club styles has really helped in looking at how African and these club styles and hip hop styles tend to be used. So I did a lot of studying, a lot of looking, and then I continued training in it. And again, like I said, doing the Talo technique a little bit, not as much, at Serendipity in Leicester. And that's where I met Alessandra as well, and just absorbing what I can and then going back to the studio and then training what I can. And it's still an ongoing journey, but I think it all comes down from wanting to solidify how my body moves outside of styles and then letting things permeate. So for a good 3 years, I've been training in this holistic movement.
Sorry, just careful with the mic. Just
right, okay.
I'm getting a lot of rustling.
Okay, that might be my beard. So what was I saying? I've been training in holistic movement. So the saying that I hold on to is, if I can master my own body, by theory, I should be able to master most styles because, I primed my body for a lot of things. So, it's kind of looking into the body, training it to be a vessel.
Yep.
That's pretty much what I've done to allow for the styles that I already have been training to sit a bit easier and for new styles to kind of permeate easily as well.
So what sort of things do you do to prepare yourself physically and mentally and all these things for a broad range of styles? Like for me, for instance, I've come up with a 10-minute morning routine that combines the functional movements that are most important for me for dance and my dance goals, combined with my physio stuff that I have to do just to correct my posture and work on injuries. And some of the stretches that are the most important for me for getting splits and maintaining the kind of flexibility I need as a dancer. And I've sort of condensed it down into a 10-minute sequence, complex sequence of that's kind of just based around functional movement and kind of yoga and a few other stretches that are the core things of what I need as a dancer. And I find as long as I do this every day, it helps give me a baseline of kind of fitness and physical functionality that helps me across all my dance styles as well as just my general physical health. So for me, that's things just calf raises, balances. I do squats and push-ups, as well as like, downward dog, like a basic yoga sequence with some leg stuff as well to work on like my legs, and a few flexibility things. Yeah, and then my physio bits, stretching out my hip flexors, targeting my back muscles to strengthen my back. So I found things like, especially trying to have longevity in dance, those things are really important. And I just find, when your general fitness level is just up, like everything is going to come so much easier. And I also just don't want to waste important training sessions, where I'm working on skills, just working on
Yeah.
fitness. Like I'd rather have my fitness be at a good level, and like make sure my strength and flexibility is there, so that when I'm getting into detailed stuff, my body isn't holding me back. Um, uh, that my fitness is there so that I can just be working on it. Because when you're physically exhausted, you can't focus, so you just don't pick up the techniques as well.
Yeah.
um, or you're just like prone to injuries. What for you has been the kind of essential things that have like helped anchor your practice and your physicality, you think?
In terms of movement practice, I drew a lot from Farrasini Terranova, which is like a practice, the brainchild of Tom Slav English. It uses a lot of martial arts based stuff, yoga, some contemporary movement, but it's pretty much
Mm-hmm.
focused on like the body and what it does. This is where I pretty much learned to like be specific about areas of my body that need improvement, whereas like fine tuning, strengthening, flexibility, things like that.
Yeah.
So a lot of my practice is leg and spine heavy,
Yeah.
because I like occupying like a low space, but not necessarily floor work. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of squats, a lot of deep squats, sitting down in a deep squat and like kind of opening up the hip flexors, opening up the legs, the knees. I've started having knee problems, so I've been working on knees as well. But yeah, a lot is focused on joints and musculature, like what's it called? Them being in sync and working in tandem. There's a lot about suspended weight onto these joints
Mm-hmm.
for a long period of time. So it's not like high impact. It's low impact, but like over long durations. I'd be holding
Okay.
positions for long. I'd be walking through or moving through joints repeatedly to kind of, I guess, oil them up, if you want to use that.
Yeah. Kind of,
A lot,
we talk about opening up in contemporary dance a lot, sort of opening
yeah,
up the joints, creating space.
exactly.
That might not be necessarily physiologically what's happening, but that's kind of the idea and the sensation that it creates,
Yeah,
and that it results in.
elasticity in the joints, but kind of, if yeah. And also a lot of spine work, like undulations, rotations, twists, and like stretches, because a lot of my movement comes from the spine.
Yeah.
Even a lot of my house movement comes from the spine, like that looseness and that being intricate.
I think that's the case with most styles. Core is
Yeah,
the one core, or it might be spine. I mean, talking about the spine is really kind of talking about the core, but core with mobility and flexibility.
yeah,
But the core, whether it's core strength or core mobility, core flexibility, if anyone asks me what should I work on, I say work on that, because it's useful everywhere, across
right,
every dance style, across every sport. Like how, you'll need, depending on what you do, you'll need different strength and flexibility metrics for like break dance versus ballet versus ballroom. But you know different kind of ratios for leg and arm, like upper body, lower body. But my core is always useful, and it's also one of those things that you can't really overdo.
yeah,
You can overdo it with some strength stuff and flexibility, but you can't really kind of overdo core. Like it just helps, and it helps like ubiquitously across the board. So, um, You
And
also bring up an interesting thing of like, yeah, like when I was at Laban, like, and generally in contemporary dance context, they're really good at this stuff of teaching you how to look after your body. But for like a lot of hip hop artists, and I think about my experience as a breakdancer, like there's little knowledge of how to really properly look after your body and take care of it, how to prep your body for movement, how to work on it afterwards. And so
yeah, it,
it's so
it
important, like these things that you're sharing for hip hop artists to find ways, or you talked about this system you came upon to find things that work for you, that give you longevity and help keep you injury free.
yeah, absolutely. And I think there is no like one size fits all. I think that's the moment I realized that is the moment I kind of went off the beat, like the beaten footpath, and kind of just found a few things for myself. Like in no way did I think as a hip hop dancer I'd be doing contemporary based technique to improve my body. But I
Mm,
think it's less about the technique, it's more about their approach to the body and
yeah.
how to maintain and fine tune it. And, you know, for a while as well, I was dancing in a way that I was perceiving that wait, there's a better way of saying this. The way I perceived myself looked different to how I was actually dancing. So I'll be
Mm,
doing a style thinking I look one way. And once I physicalize it, I look quite different. And for a while, I
right.
didn't understand why, but it's because, again, like you said, like the ratio of musculature, like joint work and like fluidity weren't really working the way I needed them to. So I needed to kind of return to the body and ask it questions. What's going on? I'm
Yeah.
trying to pop and you're giving me some weak things. Well, I'm trying to be loose and you're giving me some like some rigidness. So yeah, once I learned, just what works for you, and I wanted to find that out, it's really helped in being like a sponge. And I feel like I might not be the best at a lot of things. And no, this isn't about, the master, jack of all trades, master of none thing, which is quite an interesting saying on a tangent. That used to mean a good thing. But anyway, yeah, not in that sense, but like I have good technique in a lot of things that I'm confident that I could work with a lot of different people and styles and still come out as a competent technical dancer.
Mm,
Uh, I've stopped for a long time trying to be the best at anything. That doesn't really interest me. And I don't know how people will take that, hearing that, but I've no interest in being the best. I just want to be really good at a lot of things and be competent at a lot of things and know that I can then lean on all of these things that
mm,
will then, elevate me somewhere else, somewhere more. So yeah, I think that speaks for itself that you recognize how, uh, yeah, like much more of a sponge I am in taking different information and letting
mm,
it sit in my body naturally because at the front, at the base of all of this, I understand my body quite well.
mm. I think part of it is as well as like it depends what like journey you're on as a dancer. And I think part of it is that you are very much, I think, like an artist and you do express through your dance. It's not just about being the best. Yeah, I think when you're trying, especially when you're making work or you're trying to express something through your dance, you often end up coming to you're just trying to find the tools, right? So it's not necessarily about reaching the pinnacle, but it's about like finding the right movement in the same way that you'd find the right words to say
Exactly.
something. And so it's more about the kind of, yes, that vocabulary is important, but that vocabulary is important because of what it allows you to say, not because of how maybe like technically well written it is, you
Yeah.
know. Whereas for other people, they're competitive and they want to be the best and they want to be like, I want to be, the world number one breakdancer. And that's their thing. And that's how they drive their dance. I think it's a really good thing to acknowledge in yourself. One of the things that like is kind of I don't know, an interesting thing for myself is that I think I'm relatively similar. I'm not I'm just not that driven by competition. I'm a little bit, but it's
Yeah.
not the thing that brings me home to roost. It's I find ultimately that in most things that I do, I'm really interested and driven in building things, that I'm so much more a builder than a beater. Like, I don't enjoy necessarily beating other people out or being at the top, but I really enjoy creating something that, like, I'm really proud of. And yeah, and so that was quite, like, similarly an important point for me with, like, b-boying, realizing that competition was fun, but I found it wasn't a great motivator. I wasn't improving that much by trying to do competitions. I found that I improved most when I was just, like, with my friends, and when I was just trying to, like, be creative as a dancer and find my style and find my groove and find my thing. And um, that actually, you know, having that approach, like, I found that actually I got a much more out of my dancing. Um, yeah, it's an interesting thing, but it's a good thing to be able to reflect on yourself, to be able to kind of move on from that, because otherwise we can get stuck on, like, oh, I'm not a competition dancer, and so I'm not a good dancer,
Yeah,
or
yeah.
I'm not, you,
What
you
works?
know, whatever it is. Yeah.
Yeah. What is it that works for you? And for me, I think even that the terminology, language matters to me. I'm a writer and poet, so words do matter. So like, I've had to figure out certain things that click with me and certain things that don't, and like moving away from things, like competition and things like that. I think overcoming suits me better, because I can overcome a challenge, and I
Mm,
can overcome, a certain benchmark, or I can overcome a certain issue, or yeah, like overcoming works for me because yeah, it feels more like a natural motivator because it's not me versus something. It's just me. And
yeah.
again, it always comes back down to me, and I think always returning to self um has been really helpful in moving forward and overcoming stuff. But yeah, it is an interesting conversation, ongoing actually. Competition versus well, not, I guess, but yeah.
Mm. So you've done some, we sort of brushed over some of the cool career stuff that you've done. You've worked for some interesting people, and including creating your own work. Um, dancing, and done quite a hybrid of things, sort of choreographing yourself and directing yourself, to also writing for dance shows, and just dancing and then being a performer. Um, it's an interesting kind of hybrid. I think about sort of what's next as well. I don't often ask this on the podcast, but where do you sort of see your journey going? Where is Isaac in 5, 10 years? Where do you see yourself moving? Maybe that's too much of a kind of formal corporate question, but, like, where do you see your practice going? Because I think your dialogue is quite interesting, and the way that you unpack it is quite, like, unique. So where's the ideal road, I guess? Where is this all taking you, do you think?
Um, a lot of places, and I think I don't like limiting myself to just one or a few things.
Hmm.
I mean, I think that there is a double-edged sword kind of analogy here about wanting to do everything.
Oh yeah.
But I just want to do things I'm interested in. I want to express myself in ways that are comfortable to me. So specifically, I'm moving more into film, like documentary as well as like dance film
Hmm.
based work. I'm interested in how messaging, ideas, and like technically choreography and movement can be packaged in a film. Because that also allows me to lean more into my writing, into my text, whether it's
Yeah.
poetry or storytelling or prose or whatever, you know, that, that there is a beautiful marriage that happens on screen with dance and text that I really want to tap into for myself, especially with like the styles I work with. I think that's something I'm really excited about. I'm not forsaking the stage, but I want to limit the stage to like high moments of expression, meaning I don't want to churn out work just for the sake of churning out work.
Right.
Whenever I take to the stage, I want to say something, and if I'm not, there's a lot of other things that I want to say that lend themselves better with film. And yeah, that also gives me a bit more creative leeway. That's where I see myself going. That's where I'm going at the moment. I'm pushing myself to that. I've already been involved in 2 film projects, and I've got 2 more. One more coming definitely, and hopefully another one. Hopefully, we'll see how that goes. But yeah, definitely moving more into like dance, film, work.
Where will you release those? Will those be available on the website? Will those be at like, you know, film festivals? What's the outlook for those?
So one of them has been a collaboration with a contemporary Bharatanatyam dance artist and choreographer called Sita Patel. That one's out January 19th on Cats Palace Theatre's main stage. And Digital Space, sorry. The others, I'm not sure if there's an NDA on them. So I'm not sure how much I can say at this moment, but they will be on my website, and there will be links floating through like my social media links as well.
By the way, I definitely think like of all the people I've had on the podcast so far, best website award goes to Isaac, because I think yeah, like you have a cool website, man, and you can tell that you're like a writer and a copywriter because of just like how just like visually and like all of that, it's just laid out in a really logical way. Not slamming anybody else's website. I've seen some good websites, but yours was definitely the most like, oh, this is really nice to like navigate and like click on and read and stuff. It was like, I was like, oh,
nice. The web designer Christian Villaflor, who sadly is giving up digital working, but yeah, we'll have our own paths. But yeah, it is a really nice website. I'm really happy with it, and it does need a bit of updating and fine tuning. But yeah, everything will be on there when the time comes. But yeah, I also really want to do more like one-shot film dance stuff, just to like capture the essence of improv and freestyle. I feel like there's something about film that lends itself all to that as well. Like when you see that on stage, you might be in a different part of the audience and you experience something different. But I feel like the camera is your eye and is the eye of the audience, so you can take them through a lot of different pathways that might not be available on stage. And I really want to capture the essence of improv with all of the styles I do, but specifically house and like the West African styles I use. I just
sometimes with like the way some dance is filmed, like I understand like film's its own medium and it's not like just an extension of this stage, but also I do sometimes get annoyed when I feel like the editing gets in the way of the dance, and there's all these cuts to all these different angles. And sometimes I'm just like, just show me the dance, just give me a mid like if I'm, especially if the choreography is good and I'm enjoying the choreography and enjoying the dance, I'm like, just give me a mid shot and just keep me there. Like, you know, like don't get in the way of it, or give me like all these cool angles that are like moving me around. Like I just want to see it.
What's the most interesting thing to see? And I think drawing the eye to that is quite interesting in itself. And I have this idea like being quite macro, because I think there's intricacies in the body's musculature as well that gets missed out on in these beautiful styles that I want to capture, but obviously not just, you know, close-ups and stuff. But anyway, we'll get there. But yeah, that's my journey that I want to take. Definitely writing more and being more film-based.
Yeah. Oh, sick, dude. I'm so looking forward to it. When can where can people check out your stuff? The website, you're on Instagram as well, is that right?
Yeah, I'm more active on Instagram and Twitter. It's just at my full name, Isaac Ouro-Gnao. And my website's the same thing, isaacouro-gnao.com. and yeah, everything will be updated there. And I am really excited for this year, the possibilities of working more with my stage work that are complex, and then having just all of these ideas that I normally have and I don't know what to do with, kind of existing in film, especially having dance and poetry work together. But yeah, really excited for that.
Yeah, dude. Yeah, I'm excited for you, and I think you're doing great stuff. I watched the Father Figurine last night, and I thought the writing you did for it was great. Which for those who haven't seen it, check. We'll put it in the description. Check it out. It's sort of a kind of, you know, waiting for Godot about father figures in a way, and around this sort of this uh, tense father-son relationship. Um, I thought it really handled it in a really kind of direct but also sensitive way. I do sometimes get frustrated. I think mental health is always and relationships are always a tough one to take on in general, because you can really screw it up. And I've seen some people really screw it up and do it in quite insensitive ways. Um, but you know, I think dance and dance theater and the use of the spoken word in that piece as well, um, lends it a lot to be able to sort of articulate relationships and um, the difficulty of navigating those relationships and navigating mental health. And yeah, and I thought you did a brilliant job of it, and I'm excited to see more.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that has a very interesting story behind it, working with body politic and making that piece over a few years actually. Yeah, it's a really interesting piece. But yeah, no, thank you.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks for being on the podcast, and thank you, dance people, and we will see you next week.